Most people look forward to the ball drop, the confetti, the champagne, but for me, New Year's Eve just brings back the sound of heavy boots on hardwood floors. It was December 31st, 2019. I was 17 years old. I was house sitting for the Robinsons, this wealthy couple who lived a few blocks over. They were off skiing in Aspen and paid me $100 a night just to watch their golden retriever, Duke, and make sure the pipes didn't freeze. It was an easy gig. Their house was massive. One of those modern places with too many windows and an alarm system I was terrified to touch. Around 11 p.m., I was settled on their white leather couch. I had the TV on, watching the Times Square coverage. Duke was asleep on the rug in front of me. Outside, the neighborhood was already getting loud. Firecrackers, bottle rockets, the cheap stuff teenagers set off in the street. Every time a loud one went off, the windows rattled a little. I wasn't scared though, I was bored. I was scrolling through Instagram, seeing all my friends at parties I wasn't invited to. At 11:45 p.m., things started to get intense outside. The fireworks were constant now. It sounded like a war zone. I turned the TV volume up to hear Ryan Seacrest over the noise. That's when Duke woke up. He didn't whine. He didn't bark. He just stood up, stiff as a board, and stared into the dark hallway that led to the kitchen. The hair on his back stood up. "What is it, boy?" I asked. He let out a low, vibrating growl. I paused the TV. The house went silent, except for the explosions outside. Then, right after a loud firework, I heard it. It sounded like wood splintering. It came from the back of the house. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was just a firework hitting the siding, or maybe a tree branch. But Duke was backing away now, whimpering. I grabbed my phone. 11:55 p.m. I walked toward the kitchen. The floor was open concept, so there weren't really doors, just big archways. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the streetlights reflecting off the snow outside. I scanned the room. The back door, the one leading to the deck, was wide open. Freezing air was rushing in. Curtains were flapping. I knew I had locked that door. I checked it 3 times. Someone had kicked it in. Panic hit me like a physical punch. I couldn't breathe. I turned to run back to the front door, but then I heard a sound that froze me in place. Broken glass stepping on tile. Someone was already in the kitchen. I dove behind the kitchen island. It was huge, marble, and my only cover. I curled up into a ball, clutching my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even unlock the screen to dial 911. Heavy footsteps, wet boots. The intruder wasn't rushing. He was walking slowly, calmly. He stopped right on the other side of the island. I could hear his breathing. It was heavy, congested. I could smell him too, stale alcohol and gasoline. On the TV in the other room, the countdown began. 10! The crowd screamed. The footsteps moved closer to my side of the island. 9! I squeezed my eyes shut. I knew if I looked up, I'd see him. 8! I heard the sound of a drawer sliding open, the silverware drawer. 7! Metal clinking against metal. He was looking for something. 6! He found it. The distinct shing of a chef's knife being pulled from the wood block. 5! I held my breath. My lungs burned. I was ready to die. 4! He stopped moving. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! The TV erupted in cheers. Outside, the neighborhood exploded. Massive fireworks went off everywhere. The noise was deafening, and in that chaos, right next to my ear, a voice whispered, "Happy New Year, kid." Then, the back door slammed shut. I didn't move until the sun came up. When the cops finally arrived, they found muddy boot prints all over the kitchen. They trailed from the back door, around the island, and stopped right where I had been hiding. He had stood over me. He had the knife. He watched me shaking on the floor while the world celebrated. He could have killed me, but he just wanted to wish me a happy new year. The Robinsons moved out a month later. I don't blame them, because sometimes when the ball drops and the noise starts, I swear I can still hear that heavy breathing right behind me. Christmas Eve is supposed to be the safest night of the year. It's warm, it's cozy, and the world feels like it pauses for a few hours. But for me, I can never look at a Santa suit the same way again. It happened back in 2014. I was 14 years old. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked and put those blow-up snowmen in their front yards. My parents were huge on tradition. Every Christmas Eve, they went to midnight mass at our church. Usually, I had to go with them. But that year, I faked a stomach ache. I gave an Oscar-worthy performance, clutching my stomach and moaning about bad eggnog. She told me to stay in bed, drink some ginger ale, and lock the doors. As soon as their SUV pulled out of the snowy driveway, I was out of bed. I wasn't sick. I just wanted the house to myself. I wanted to play Halo on my Xbox 360 without my dad telling me to turn the volume down. For the first hour, it was awesome. I had a bag of Doritos, a liter of soda, and total freedom. But around 11:30 p.m., the wind started picking up. It was a blizzard outside. You couldn't see 5 feet past the window. The house started making those settling noises old houses make in the winter. Wood popping, pipes groaning. I turned the TV volume up to drown it out. That's when I heard it. It was faint, coming from outside. I laughed. I figured it was just the wind hitting the wind chimes on the back porch. Or maybe my neighbors, the Millers, were out walking their dog with a collar on. I went back to my game. 10 minutes later, I heard it again. Closer this time. It didn't sound like wind chimes anymore. It sounded heavy, rhythmic, like someone walking with bells attached to them. I paused the game. The silence in the house was heavy. I walked to the living room window and peered through the blinds. The streetlights were flickering through the snow. The street was empty. No cars, no walkers, just fresh, white snow. I was about to turn away when I saw something in the backyard. Motion sensor lights usually trigger if a deer walks by. They were pitch black, but then a lighter flicked on. A tiny flame illuminated a face right by our back patio door. My heart stopped. It was a man. He was wearing a Santa suit, but it wasn't like the ones at the mall. It was dirty. The red velvet was stained almost black in spots, and the white fur trim was matted and gray. He was smoking a cigarette, shielding the flame with his hand. He wasn't carrying a sack of toys. He was holding a crowbar. I ducked below the windowsill, gasping for air. My brain couldn't process it. Why was there a dirty Santa in my backyard? Then I heard the sound that made my blood run cold, the handle of the sliding glass door rattling. He was trying to get in. I remembered my mom telling me to lock the doors. I had checked the front, but I forgot the back slider. The lock on that door was busted. You had to jam a wooden dowel in the track to secure it. I hadn't put the dowel in. The door slid open. The sound of the heavy glass rolling on the metal track echoed through the house like a gunshot. A gust of freezing wind blew into the kitchen. I was hiding behind the couch in the living room, curled into a ball. I didn't have my phone. It was upstairs charging. I heard his heavy, wet boots squeaking on the floor. He wasn't rushing. He was taking his time. I heard him open the fridge, the clinking of glass bottles. He was drinking my dad's beer. Then he started humming. "Santa Claus is coming to town." His voice was raspy, deep, like he had swallowed gravel. He walked into the living room. I held my breath. I pressed my hand over my mouth so hard it hurt. I could smell him from behind the couch. He smelled like wet dog, stale cigarettes, and something metallic, like old pennies. He stopped right in front of the TV. My Xbox was still on the pause menu. "Halo," he muttered. "Good game." He stood there for what felt like an hour. I was staring at the wall, praying he wouldn't look behind the couch. Then I heard him unzip something. A heavy thud hit the floor. He laughed, a low, wheezing chuckle. "Merry Christmas, kid." Then the boots turned around. He walked back to the kitchen. The sliding door rumbled shut. I didn't move for another 20 minutes. I stayed frozen until I saw the headlights of my parents' car flash against the living room wall. As soon as they walked in the front door, I burst into tears. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and searched the house, while my mom called 911. The guy was gone. But the police found footprints in the snow leading from the woods to our back door. And in the living room, that heavy thud I heard, he had left a gift, wrapped in dirty newspaper, sitting right in the middle of the floor. The cops opened it. Inside was a hunting knife, and a note scribbled in red marker on a napkin. It said, "You've been good this year, don't ruin it." They never caught him. To this day, I don't celebrate Christmas. I don't do presents. And if I hear a bell jingle, I lock every door in the house and sit with a bat until the sun comes up. Santa sees you when you're sleeping? Yeah, I know he does. There's a specific kind of loneliness you feel driving I-95 at 2:30 in the morning, especially when it's raining. It was November 2018. I was a sophomore in college, driving home to Florida for Thanksgiving break to save money on a flight. I had been on the road for 10 hours. I was exhausted. I was running on lukewarm gas station coffee and adrenaline. The rain was coming down hard, smearing the windshield wipers. The only thing I could hear was the rhythmic thump-thump of the wipers and the hiss of my tires on the wet asphalt. I hadn't seen another car in 20 minutes. It was just me and the blacktop illuminated by my weak headlights. Then I checked my rearview mirror. 2 bright lights popped into existence behind me. They weren't there a second ago. I was sure of it. The road behind me had been empty blackness. Now there was a car. It was moving fast, way over the speed limit. Within seconds, it was right on my bumper. It was an older sedan, boxy. Maybe a 90s Ford Taurus. I couldn't tell the color in the dark, but it looked beat up. The driver had their high beams on. They were blinding. They filled my entire cabin with harsh white light, reflecting off every mirror, stinging my tired eyes. I tapped my brakes. The universal signal for "back off, buddy." He didn't back off. He got closer. He was so close I couldn't see his headlights anymore in the mirror. Just the dark grille of his car towering over my trunk. My heart started pounding. I could feel the vibration of his engine over mine through the floorboards. I sped up, 75 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour. The rain was making the car hydroplane slightly, the steering wheel feeling loose in my hands. He matched my speed perfectly, like we were tied together with a rope. Then he started flashing his lights. Click, clack, on and off. High beam to low beam, over and over again, rhythmic, almost frantic. I was panicking now. I was searching for an exit, but there was nothing, just dense pine trees lining both sides of the highway. Suddenly, he swerved into the left lane to pass me. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, waiting to see who was driving as he went by. He pulled up alongside me. I looked over. The windows were tinted dark, almost black. I couldn't see inside. He didn't pass. He just stayed right there, pacing me at 85 miles an hour in the pouring rain. We drove like that for a full minute, 2 cars side by side on an empty highway. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he slammed on his brakes. I watched in my rearview mirror as his taillights rapidly got smaller and smaller, finally disappearing around a bend behind me. Gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely steer. I slowed down to 65, trying to calm my nerves. I figured it was just some drunk idiot messing with me. 10 miles went by. The rain started to let up. I was just starting to relax when I crested a steep hill. My stomach dropped out of my body. At the bottom of the hill, right in the middle of my lane, A car was sitting, dead, stopped. No lights on, no hazards, just a dark shape in the road. I slammed on my brakes. My tires screamed on the wet pavement. The anti-lock brakes chattered violently under my foot. I swerved hard to the left shoulder, barely missing the back bumper of the stopped car by inches. As I slid past it in slow motion, my headlights washed over the vehicle. It was the same boxy sedan, the Taurus. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that the car wasn't just stopped. It was facing the wrong way. It was facing me. And as my lights hit the windshield, I saw the driver. He wasn't looking at me. His head was tilted all the way back against the headrest, facing the ceiling. His mouth was wide open in a silent scream, and his eyes, I swear, even in that split second, I saw that his eyes were missing. Just dark, empty sockets. I didn't stop. I didn't call 911 until I was 2 towns over at an all-night diner with other people around. The state troopers checked that mile marker 20 minutes later. They said there was nothing there. No car, no skid marks, nothing. I don't drive interstate at night anymore. I take flights, I take trains, because I know what I saw. That car didn't pass me to get ahead. It was waiting for me. If you've ever driven cross-country, you know there's a special kind of darkness out west. It's not like the dark in the suburbs. Out there, it's heavy. It feels suffocating. There are stretches of highway where you won't see another pair of headlights for an hour. It was the summer of 2016. I was 20 years old, driving my beat-up Honda Civic back to college in Austin. I was trying to push through the night to save money on a motel. Bad idea. Around 3 a.m., I was on a dead stretch of I-10. No cell service, just static on the radio and the endless hum of my tires on asphalt. I was zoning out, hypnotized by the yellow lines, when it happened. Pop. The sound was like a gunshot inside the car. The steering wheel jerked violently to the right. I slammed on the brakes and managed to wrestle the car onto the gravel shoulder. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I sat there for a second, just breathing, listening to the engine tick-ticking as it cooled down. Outside, it was dead silent. No crickets, no wind, just a massive empty void. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The air was hot and dry. Sure enough, the rear passenger tire was shredded. I cursed under my breath. I had a spare, but changing a tire on the side of an interstate in pitch blackness is terrifying. Every shadow looks like something moving. I popped the trunk and started dragging out the jack and the lug wrench. The metal scraping against the asphalt echoed loudly in the silence. I was on my knees, sweating, struggling with a rusted lug nut, when I saw the lights. 2 pinpricks of light in the distance behind me. At first, I was relieved. Maybe it was a trucker, maybe a cop. But as they got closer, I realized they were moving too slow. It was an old pickup truck. I couldn't make out the color in the dark, but it sounded awful. The engine had a deep, rattling cough, like it was running on broken parts. Instead of passing me in the left lane, the truck slowed down. It pulled onto the shoulder right behind my car. The headlights were blinding. I couldn't see the driver. I just stood there, holding the tire iron like a baseball bat, shielding my eyes. The truck sat there idling for a solid minute. The rattling engine noise filled the air. Then, the driver's side door groaned open. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a grease-stained trucker hat and a denim jacket even though it was 90 degrees out. He didn't walk toward me immediately. He just stood by his door, silhouetted by his own headlights. "Got trouble, son?" he called out. His voice was flat, monotone, no inflection at all. "Yeah, just a flat," I yelled back, trying to sound tougher than I felt. "I got it covered, though. Thanks." He didn't leave. He started walking toward me. Slow, deliberate steps. The gravel crunched loudly under his heavy boots. He stopped about 5 feet away. Up close, he looked off. His skin was leathery, and his eyes were wide open, unblinking. He was staring right through me. He wasn't looking at the flat tire. He was only looking at me. "You're a long way from home," he said. Again, that flat, robotic voice. "I'm fine," I said, tightening my grip on the tire iron. "Really? You can go." He took another step closer. I could smell him now. Old sweat and something sweet, like rotting fruit. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was just a stretching of skin, showing way too many teeth. "I can help you," he whispered. I got room in the back. I looked past him at the bed of his pickup truck. It was covered with a heavy canvas tarp, tied down tight with ropes, but there was a shape under the tarp. Something long, about the size of a person, and I swear I saw the tarp move slightly, like something underneath it was breathing. Every alarm bell in my body went off. "Get back in your truck," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't stop smiling. He just tilted his head. "Suit yourself," he said. He turned around slowly and walked back to his truck. He got in, slammed the door, and peeled out onto the highway. He didn't even turn his headlights back off high beam until he was half a mile away. I threw the spare tire on with only 3 lug nuts tightened. I didn't care. I threw the jack in the trunk and floored it. I drove 90 miles an hour until I hit the first gas station with lights. I sat in that brightly lit parking lot until the sun came up, shaking uncontrollably. I don't know what was under that tarp. I don't want to know, but I haven't driven at night since. If my car breaks down now, I lock the doors, recline the seat so no one can see me, and I pray until daylight. Because out on that highway, not everyone who stops is there to help. If you've never worked the graveyard shift at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, you don't know what real silence sounds like. It's not quiet, it's loud. It's a low, electrical hum that gets into your teeth. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. The slushy machine churning rhythmically in the corner. The compressor for the beer cooler kicking on with a loud, startling clunk every 20 minutes. It was the summer of 2011. I was 19, working at a Texaco about 20 miles from the nearest town. Most nights, my only company was the radio and the occasional trucker buying a pack of Marlboros and an energy drink. But this Tuesday night was dead. Not a single car since midnight. Just me trapped in that glass box of light, surrounded by miles of cornfields and darkness. At 3:17 a.m., I was wiping down the hot dog roller grill for the 5th time when I saw headlights turn off the highway. I watched on the grainy little security monitor under the counter. It was an old tan Buick sedan, caked in mud. It looked like it had been driving on dirt roads for a week. It didn't pull up to a pump. It pulled right up to the front doors, parking horizontally across the entrance, blocking my view out. The engine cut off. The headlights went dark. I waited for someone to get out. Nothing happened. The car just sat there. I couldn't see through the tinted windows. 5 minutes passed. The only sound was the whir clunk of the cooler compressor. My nerves started fraying. I was about to grab the store phone to call the non-emergency line when the driver's side door finally creaked open. A man stepped out. He looked normal enough, maybe 40 years old, wearing a faded beige windbreaker and jeans. He looked like a high school math teacher who was just tired. He walked to the door. The electronic door chime announced him. He didn't look at me. He didn't nod. He walked straight past the register, past the candy aisle, to the very back wall of the store where the automotive supplies were. I stayed behind the counter, watching him in the parabolic mirror mounted in the corner. He stood there, staring at the wall of motor oil. He wasn't browsing. He was just standing, frozen. "Can I help you find something, sir?" I called out. My voice sounded too loud in the small space. He didn't flinch. He didn't answer. After another long minute, he slowly reached out and picked up a bottle of brake fluid. He turned and walked toward the counter. His movements were stiff, jerky, like a bad stop-motion animation. He placed the brake fluid on the counter. Thud. He still hadn't made eye contact. He was staring at the cigarette rack behind me. "Just the brake fluid?" I asked, ringing it up. "That'll be $4.50. He didn't move to get his wallet. Instead, he leaned in closer to the counter. He put both hands flat on the Formica countertop. I noticed his fingernails were caked with dark dirt. He finally looked at me. His eyes were incredibly wide, bloodshot, and his pupils were fully dilated, swallowing the iris, like he was in a pitch-black room instead of a brightly lit store. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out, just a dry, clicking sound in the back of his throat. My stomach turned over. I instinctively took a step back toward the phone on the wall. Then he spoke. His voice was a strained whisper, like his vocal cords were damaged. "Do you have a bathroom?" "Yeah," I stammered, pointing to the back corner. "It's around the corner, past the coolers. It's unlocked." He didn't say thank you. He turned stiffly and walked toward the back. I heard the bathroom door open, then close. I waited. 10 minutes went by. I was freaked out. I thought maybe he was doing drugs in there, or maybe he had passed out. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the counter, store policy, unofficially, and walked to the back. The hallway was dim. The bathroom door was shut. I put my ear to the wood. Silence. No water running. No movement. I knocked. "Sir, you okay in there?" Nothing. I tried the handle. It wasn't locked. I pushed the door open slowly, bat raised, ready for anything. The bathroom was empty. A single, bare light bulb was on. The small window above the toilet, a window barely big enough for a cat to squeeze through, was pushed open. The screen was torn out. He was gone. I ran back to the front of the store. The tan Buick was still parked outside, blocking the doors. I called the cops immediately. A state trooper arrived 20 minutes later. We went out to the car together. The trooper shone his heavy mag light through the window. The keys were still in the ignition, and on the passenger seat, there was a pile of clothes. A beige windbreaker, jeans, a shirt. They were the exact clothes the man had been wearing inside the store, folded neatly, like he had taken them off before driving there. The trooper ran the plates. The car had been reported stolen 3 days ago from a town 2 states over. The owner was missing. They never found the guy. They dusted the bathroom for prints, but found nothing. I quit 2 days later. I work days now, in a busy office with lots of people. But sometimes, when I'm in a public restroom and I hear the door latch click, I freeze. I remember those wide, black eyes, and I wonder how a grown man squeezed through a 12-inch window without making a sound. There's a rule when you work the night shift at a gas station in the boonies. After 10 p.m., the doors stay locked. You do business through the night window. It's this thick, bulletproof plexiglass drawer that slides back and forth. You put the money in, I slide the cigarettes out. We never touch. We never breathe the same air. I was working the shift alone. It was January in Wyoming. The wind out here doesn't just blow, it screams. Inside the station, it was warm, smelling like burnt coffee and pine sol. Outside, it was 10 below zero. Around 2 a.m., the wind was howling so loud it shook the big metal sign out by the road. I was sitting behind the counter reading a magazine when the motion sensor alarm for the forecourt went off. I looked up at the monitors. A truck had pulled up to pump 4. It was the furthest pump from the building, right at the edge of the darkness where the canopy lights faded out. It was a beat-up pickup truck, no license plate on the front. I waited for the driver to get out and swipe a card, but the door didn't open. The truck just sat there, idling. I could see the exhaust puffing out into the freezing air, illuminated by the red taillights. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I hit the button for the intercom system. It makes this loud, static pop sound when it engages. "Can I help you folks?" I asked. My voice echoed weirdly through the outside speakers. No answer, just the sound of the wind distorting the microphone. I let go of the button. Then I saw the movement. The passenger door of the truck opened slowly. Someone fell out. They didn't step out, they fell. A limp body tumbled onto the concrete. My heart jumped into my throat. I stood up, pressing my face against the glass. It looked like a woman. She was wearing a thin t-shirt, way too cold for the weather. She wasn't moving. My instinct was to unlock the door and run out there. I grabbed the keys, but then I stopped. Something felt staged. The driver's door was still closed. The truck was still running. I grabbed the landline phone behind the counter instead. I was going to call the sheriff. I looked down at the phone to dial. When I looked back up, the body was gone. My stomach dropped. I scanned the monitors. Pump 4 was empty. The ground where she fell was empty. The motion sensor right in front of the window went off. I jumped back. A face slammed against the bulletproof glass, inches from mine. It was the woman, but she wasn't injured, and she wasn't unconscious. She was grinning. a wide, manic grin that stretched her face too tight. Her eyes were focused intensely on the keys in my hand. She didn't speak. She just raised one finger and tapped on the glass. "Open the door," she mouthed. I couldn't hear her through the thick glass, but I could read her lips perfectly. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, my voice trembling. She didn't blink. She just kept tapping. Then, from the darkness behind her, from the blind spot near the ice machine, a man stepped into the light. He was huge, wearing a ski mask. He was holding a tire iron. He didn't look at the woman. He looked at the lock on the front door. He raised the tire iron and smashed it against the glass door. The safety glass spiderwebbed, but it held. The sound was deafening in the small store. He hit it again. A hole punched through. The wind started whistling into the store. I dropped the phone and ran for the back office. It has a heavy steel door with a deadbolt. I slammed it shut and locked it just as I heard the front door shatter completely. The sound of boots crunching on broken glass filled the store. I huddled in the corner of the office, in the dark, listening. I heard them walking around, tearing things off shelves. But they weren't stealing money. They weren't taking cigarettes. They were walking toward the back office. They stopped right outside the steel door. I held my breath. I could hear them breathing on the other side. Then I heard the woman's voice, crystal clear. "We know you're in there, Danny." I froze. I had never seen these people in my life. I wasn't wearing a name tag. "Come out, Danny. It's cold out here." Then came the tapping on the steel door. I sat there for 3 hours until the sheriff's deputies banged on the front entrance. The intruders were gone. They hadn't taken a single dollar from the register. They hadn't touched the safe. The only thing missing was the employee file from the manager's desk, the one with my home address and social security number. I quit that morning. I moved 3 towns over. But I still don't have a landline. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind blows hard against my apartment window, I swear I hear that tapping.
I never planned on talking about this stuff. For a long time, I told myself it was just my brain filling in gaps, late hours, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. That's what happens when you work graveyard at a 7-Eleven that never really feels awake or asleep. This happened a few years back. I was 22, broke, and desperate enough to take the overnight shift no one else wanted. Midnight to 6 a.m. The store sat off a long, empty stretch of road. No bars, no houses, just asphalt, power lines, and darkness that felt thick enough to choke on. The kind of place where silence isn't quiet. It hums. The fluorescent lights buzzed nonstop, that sharp electric whining that drills into your skull after a while. The Slurpee machines churned and clicked like they were breathing. Every few minutes, the cooler compressor kicked on with a heavy thunk that made my shoulders jump, even after weeks on the job. At night, those sounds were my company. Around 2:47 a.m., the automatic doors slid open. Ding. That sound still messes with me. No car pulled up, no headlights, no engine noise. Just the doors opening like someone invisible had tripped the sensor. I leaned over the counter and stared into the parking lot. Empty. The wind pushed a plastic bag across the asphalt, scraping like fingernails. "Hello?" I called out, already knowing how stupid it sounded. Nothing. The doors slid shut again. I laughed it off. Sensors glitch. Happens all the time. Still, I locked my eyes on the doors longer than I needed to, listening to the lights buzz overhead, feeling that familiar prickle crawl up my spine. That was the first thing. The second thing happened closer to 3:30. I was restocking cigarettes when I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging. They came from aisle 3. I froze. The store was small. There was nowhere someone could hide without me seeing them come in. My heart started pounding so loud I swear it drowned out the buzzing lights. "Sir?" I said, trying to sound normal. "Store closes for cleaning in a bit." The footsteps stopped. Then I heard breathing. Not fast, not panicked. Deep. Wet. Like air being pulled through something wrong. I rounded the corner, every nerve screaming at me to stop. Aisle 3 was empty. No customer, no shadow, no movement. But the smell hit me immediately. Rotten, sweet, like old meat left in the sun. I gagged and backed away, the smell fading the farther I got from that aisle, like it was anchored to a spot that didn't want to be seen. I checked the bathroom next. Empty. Storage room, empty. Back door, still locked. At 3:58 a.m., the phone rang. That phone never rang overnight. The sound echoed too loud in the store, sharp and aggressive. I stared at it for a full 3 rings before picking up. 7-Eleven, this is breathing. The same breathing from aisle 3. Slow, deliberate. I pulled the receiver away from my ear, staring at it like it might bite me. "Hello?" I said again. Then a voice, low, dry, like it hadn't been used in a long time. "Why do you lock the door when I'm already inside?" The line went dead. The store felt different after that. Smaller, closer. Every sound felt closer to my ear. The lights buzzed louder. The Slurpee machines groaned like they were under strain. I kept glancing at the security monitor, half expecting to see someone standing right behind me. At 4:12 a.m., I finally saw him. The camera feed flickered, then stabilized. A man stood at the back of the store, right in front of the beer coolers. He was tall, too tall. His head nearly brushed the top of the cooler doors. His clothes looked soaked, clinging to him like he'd just crawled out of a lake. His face. I couldn't make out his face. It was blurred, not by the camera, by movement. His head twitched in tiny, unnatural jerks, like it couldn't decide where to look. I spun around. No one was there. When I looked back at the monitor, he was closer to the counter. No footsteps, no door chime. Just closer. That's when the lights went out. Not fully, just half the store. Aisles plunged into darkness, leaving only the front lights on. The buzzing stopped, replaced by a deep, oppressive quiet that made my ears ring. From somewhere behind me, I heard that breathing again, right at ear level. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped the keys as I unlocked the register drawer, not even knowing what I planned to do. Then the doors opened. Ding. The light snapped back on. A car idled outside. Normal, loud, real. A regular walked in, coffee in hand, half asleep, complaining about gas prices like it was any other night. I checked the monitors. Empty store. No tall man, no blur, no shadows. I quit 2 days later. Here's the part I don't tell people. Every now and then, when I pass that same 7-Eleven late at night, I hear the door chime, even when the doors never open. I didn't think a place that smelled like burnt coffee and hot dogs could scare me, but graveyard shifts at a 7-Eleven mess with your head in ways you don't expect. I worked there for almost a year, long enough to learn that nights have a rhythm. Doors sliding open and shut, ice dropping into cups, the low electric buzz of lights that never fully stop humming. You start hearing that hum even when you're not at work. This story happened near the end of my time there, when I was already running on fumes and bad decisions. The store sat near an old highway exit that barely got used anymore. No traffic after midnight, no houses nearby, just trees and a service road that disappeared into blackness. At night, the darkness outside the windows didn't feel empty. It felt like it was waiting. Around 1:40 a.m., everything sounded normal. Slurpee machine grinding ice, the soda fountain hissing softly, my shoes squeaking every time I moved behind the counter. Then I noticed something off. The hum of the lights wasn't steady anymore. It kept dipping, like the power was breathing in and out. I checked the breaker panel in the back. Everything looked fine. When I came back out front, the automatic doors were standing open. No ding, just open. Cold air rolled in from outside, carrying the smell of wet dirt. I stepped forward and looked out. No car, no headlights. Nothing but the empty lot and trees swaying slow in the wind. I waved my hand in front of the sensor. The doors slid shut like nothing had happened. My chest felt tight, but I shrugged it off. Old building, bad wiring. That's what I told myself. At 2:17 a.m., I heard someone knocking, not on the door, on the glass of the beer cooler. 3 slow taps, tap, tap, tap. I turned toward the sound, already annoyed, ready to tell someone we don't sell alcohol overnight. Aisle 5 was empty. The cooler doors were closed, but the knocking happened again, louder this time, echoing through the store. Tap, tap, tap. I stood there listening, my heartbeat matching the rhythm. Then it stopped. The store felt way too quiet after that, like all the machines were holding their breath. I went back behind the counter and watched the security monitors. That's when one of the screens flickered. The camera facing the parking lot froze on a single frame. A man stood right outside the doors. I hadn't seen him walk up. He was close enough that his face should have been clear, but it wasn't. It looked smeared, like someone had dragged a thumb across wet paint. He didn't move. I waited for the screen to update. It didn't. Then I heard footsteps inside the store. Wet footsteps. Slow and uneven, like shoes soaked through. I spun around. The aisles were empty. The footsteps kept going anyway, circling the counter. I could hear them behind me, then to my left, then right in front of me, even though nothing was there. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. From the back of the store, the cooler doors slammed shut on their own. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. On the monitor, the man outside lifted his head. The blur where his face should have been stretched into something like a smile. The store phone rang. I jumped so hard I nearly fell. I picked it up without thinking. All I heard was breathing, shallow and fast, like someone trying not to laugh. Then a whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. "You hear us now." The call ended. At that exact moment, every light in the store shut off. Total darkness, no hum, no machines, just silence and my own breathing, loud and shaky. Something brushed past my arm, cold, damp. I felt fingers curl around my wrist for half a second, then let go. The lights snapped back on. The monitors showed an empty parking lot. No man, no footprints, no movement. I stood there until sunrise, shaking, replaying every sound in my head. I quit the next morning. I tell people it was for school or money or stress. I don't tell them the truth. Sometimes late at night when I'm half asleep, I hear 3 slow taps in my head. Tap, 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 and I swear I can smell wet dirt and old beer, like the store never really let me leave. They say some stories are better left unfinished because once you hear the end, you can't unknow it. Tonight is one of those nights. What you're about to hear starts tame, almost like a rumor you'd laugh off with friends, but by the time we reach number 1 in this series, you'll understand why people swear these legends don't stay on the page. They follow, they listen, and they wait. If you think you're ready, start by remembering this. Number 1 isn't just scary, it changes the way people sleep forever. But before we get there, we need to begin lower on the list with a legend that asks one simple question and punishes you no matter how you answer. Number 5 is known as the slit-mouthed woman, Kuchisake Onna, and the scariest part isn't how she looks, it's how she sounds. They say she appears on empty streets, usually at night, when the air feels wrong and even your footsteps sound too loud. She wears a long coat, sometimes a mask, sometimes a scarf pulled high enough to hide her face. The streets are always quiet when she shows up. No cars, no voices, just the soft scrape of her shoes against the pavement, always behind you, never in front. People who claim to survive encounters say they heard her before they saw her. A faint giggle, the whisper of fabric moving, a sound like someone smiling too wide. Imagine walking home alone, keys clenched between your fingers, replaying your day in your head. You hear footsteps matching your pace. When you stop, they stop. When you turn around, she's standing there, just close enough that you can smell her perfume, sweet and metallic. She tilts her head and asks in a voice that sounds almost polite, "Am I pretty?" Your answer doesn't matter. If you say no, the blade comes out fast. No warning, no second chance. People say you don't even feel the pain at first, just warmth and pressure, and then the street gets very quiet. If you say yes, she smiles and pulls down the mask. Her mouth is split from ear to ear, carved into a permanent grin that shouldn't exist on a human face. Blood glistens along the edges like it's still fresh. Then she asks again, "How about now?" This is where the legend tightens its grip. People claim that even if you scream, no sound comes out, your throat locks up, your ears ring. The city around you feels fake, like a backdrop. And no matter what answer you give the second time, the blade flashes. Survivors, if they exist, say the sound stays with you. The wet slice, the soft laugh afterward, a laugh that echoes in your head long after you wake up. In Japan, there are stories of schools being shut down because children were too afraid to walk home alone. Police patrols increased, parents formed groups, and still, people vanished. Some swear that saying something clever can confuse her, that throwing candy or answering with a question might buy you time. But every version ends the same way. You never really escape, because even if she lets you go, you'll start hearing footsteps behind you on empty streets. You'll feel a smile stretching across your own face when you don't want it to. And sometimes, when you look in the mirror late at night, you'll swear your mouth looks a little wider than it used to. That's the thing about urban legends. They don't need to kill you to win. They just need to live in your head. And if that thought makes your skin crawl, you might want to stop right here. Because what's coming next doesn't even ask questions. It just watches. Number 4 comes from much closer to home, depending on where you're listening from. The Fresno nightcrawlers don't chase, they don't speak, they don't threaten. They simply appear, usually on grainy security footage or shaky late-night videos, moving in ways that make your brain reject what it's seeing. Long white legs, no arms, no head, just fabric-like shapes gliding across roads, fields, and backyards like they don't belong to this world. People first noticed them in California, near Fresno, late at night when motion sensors would trigger for no reason. Homeowners would rewind footage and see them drifting past, silent, unnatural, their movement too smooth, too deliberate. No footprints, no sound. Just a sense that something passed through and didn't care who saw it. Witnesses describe a strange quiet when they appear, like the world dips underwater. Crickets stop chirping, dogs freeze or hide. One man said he heard a faint rustling, like cloth brushing against cloth, even though there was no wind. Another said his security camera microphone picked up a low, rhythmic thump, like footsteps that never touched the ground. The creepiest part isn't what they look like. It's how calm they are. They don't rush. They don't react. They move like they've got all the time in the world, like they know you're the one who should be afraid. Some researchers tried to debunk them, calling them hoaxes or costumes, but no one ever explained the lack of shadows, the impossible leg movement, or why every video triggers the same reaction in viewers. A deep, instinctive unease, like your brain is recognizing a predator your eyes can't fully understand. People who live near the sightings say that after the footage goes viral, strange things start happening. Doors found open in the morning, motion alerts with no video, the feeling of being watched from outside bedroom windows, even on second floors. And always that silence. That heavy, pressed-down quiet, like something is standing just out of sight, waiting for you to notice it moved closer. If you think number 5 was personal, and number 4 feels invasive, understand this. Each story on this list gets closer. Closer to you. Closer to the places you think are safe. And the next one doesn't stay outside, because coming up next is a legend born on a bridge, fueled by whispers and blamed for disappearances that were never solved. The Goat Man of Maryland doesn't glide, he hunts. And if you're already uneasy, you're not ready for what comes after that. If you're still listening, it means you didn't shut this off after realizing how close these stories feel. That's usually when people stop, right after they get that itch between the shoulder blades, the one that tells you something's standing behind you, even when you're alone. What we talked about before stayed on streets and in fields, places you could avoid if you really tried. But from here on out, avoidance stops working. Because the next legend lives where curiosity pulls people in. And once you cross that line, the sounds never stop following you. Number 3 takes us to Maryland, to a stretch of road near an old railroad bridge locals warn you about in half-jokes and lowered voices. They call him the Goat Man, and depending on who you ask, he's either an urban myth, a government experiment gone wrong, or something much older that learned how to wear a shape we recognize. The stories always start the same way. Someone drives out to the bridge late at night. The engine hums steady, tires crunching gravel. The radio cuts to static for no reason. And the air gets colder the closer you get, even in summer. They say the Goat Man announces himself with sound before sight, a low bleating mixed with a wet, dragging breath. Not loud, not aggressive, just enough to make you roll down the window and listen harder. That's the mistake. People park near the bridge and step out, laughing it off, daring each other to knock on the metal beams or flash their headlights under the arch. The bridge creaks when the wind passes through it, metal whining like it's under stress. Every sound echoes, stretching longer than it should. Witnesses claim they hear footsteps on the bridge when no one's walking. Heavy steps, 4 of them, then 2. Like something shifting how it moves. Shadows slide along the concrete supports, tall and twisted, horns brushing the underside of the bridge with a scraping sound that vibrates through your teeth. Some say they smelled it first, a mix of wet fur, rust, and something rotten that doesn't belong in open air. The goat man doesn't rush. That's the detail that shows up again and again. He stalks. You'll hear branches snapping one by one, slow, deliberate, circling. Your phone loses signal. Your car refuses to start. And over it all, that breathing, deep and labored, like lungs working too hard for the body they're stuck in. People who make it back to their cars swear they heard a voice, low and mocking, repeating their names even though they never said them out loud. There are reports, never officially confirmed, of scratches found on car doors the next morning, deep grooves cut through paint and metal. Campers talk about waking up to hoof prints around their tents that suddenly turn into boot prints halfway through. One group of teenagers claim they saw it stand upright at the edge of the headlights, its silhouette wrong in every way, head tilted like it was curious, not angry. They said the last thing they heard before speeding away was laughter, rough and broken, echoing off the bridge long after it should have faded. And here's the part that doesn't get told often. Locals say the goat man doesn't always chase. Sometimes he just watches. People report the feeling weeks later, being followed on empty sidewalks, hearing hooves on pavement that turn into footsteps behind them, finding mud on their floors with no explanation. It's like, once he notices you, you never fully leave his territory. If that legend made your chest tighten, understand this. You're still in the middle of the list. The next one strips away roads, bridges, and excuses. It doesn't need a specific place. It just needs permission. And most people give it without realizing it, because number 2 isn't something you stumble into by accident. It's something that listens, learns, and waits for the exact moment you feel safe enough to let your guard down. If you made it this far, you've probably noticed something unsettling. Every legend so far had limits. A street, a bridge, a place you could point to on a map and say, "I'll never go there." Number 2 takes that comfort away, because this one doesn't belong to a single road or town. It follows people home. It learns voices. And by the time you realize what you're listening to, it already sounds like someone you trust. They call them skinwalkers. The name itself feels wrong in your mouth, like saying it too loudly might draw attention. I first heard about them through recordings, phone audio passed around in private groups, always late at night, always prefaced with warnings people pretended were jokes. Most of the stories come from the American Southwest, wide open land where sound travels far and the dark feels endless. But the thing about skinwalkers is they don't respect borders. The encounters almost always begin with sound. That's how they get you. Someone hears footsteps outside their house after midnight, slow pacing, back and forth. Then a knock, soft at first, careful. The kind of knock that makes you think maybe a neighbor needs help. You stand there listening, heart beating in your ears, trying to decide. Then you hear your name, perfectly pronounced, familiar. People swear it's the voice of a family member, a friend, a partner, someone who should not be outside at that hour. The voice sounds close, right on the other side of the door, but something about it feels stretched, like it's being pulled thin. The pauses between words are wrong, too long, like whatever's speaking has to remember how sentences work. Those who open the door rarely talk about what they see. The ones who don't open it, they hear scratching, nails dragging across wood, fingers testing windows, breathing that doesn't sync with the words being spoken. One man said the voice outside his trailer kept repeating, "Let me in." But every time it spoke, it sounded like a different person trying to imitate the same voice. Skinwalkers are said to wear shapes, animals first, coyotes standing too still, deer watching from the edge of headlights without blinking, then something worse, animals moving wrong, legs bending at odd angles, jaws opening too wide. People describe hearing footsteps on roofs, heavy thumps that circle slowly, like something mapping the structure of the house. Always accompanied by that breathing, rough and eager, leaking through walls like smoke. There are stories of skinwalkers mimicking cries for help, a baby crying in the distance where no child should be, a woman screaming your name from the tree line. Survivors say the sound pulls at you physically, like your body wants to move before your brain can stop it, and if you answer back, that's when things escalate. People who live in areas tied to these stories follow strict rules. Don't whistle at night, don't answer voices you can't see, don't look too long at animals standing upright, and never invite anything inside, even as a joke, because skinwalkers are said to need permission. Once they have it, they don't need to hide anymore. Those who survive claim the aftermath is worse. You'll hear familiar voices when you're alone. Your phone will ring with missed calls you don't remember making. Pets will stare at corners of rooms and refuse to enter certain spaces. And sometimes, when you speak, your own voice won't sound right to you, like it's echoing from somewhere else. If that thought makes you uneasy, brace yourself. Because everything so far has been a build-up. Number 1 doesn't knock, it doesn't mimic, it doesn't wait for permission. It arrives already dead and still moving. And once you understand how number 1 works, you'll realize why people in certain parts of the world sleep with the lights on, the windows sealed, and their ears straining for the sound of fabric dragging across the floor. By the time you reach number 1, most people are already tense, already checking shadows in their rooms, already listening a little too closely to the sounds their house makes at night. That's not an accident. Everything before this was meant to prepare you for a legend that doesn't stalk from a distance or pretend to be something familiar. This one is born from death itself. Number 1 comes from Indonesia, and once you hear how it moves, you'll understand why people swear the dead should never be disturbed. This is the legend of the Pokong. In Indonesian tradition, when someone dies, their body is wrapped tightly in a white burial shroud, tied at the head, neck, and feet. The knots are important. They're meant to keep the soul at rest. But the legend says that if those ties aren't loosened properly after burial, the spirit becomes trapped. Not asleep, not gone, trapped. And when it comes back, it doesn't walk, it hops. People say the first sign of a Pokong isn't sight, it's sound. A soft thudding noise, rhythmic and slow, like a heavy sack hitting the ground over and over. Thump, pause, thump, pause. It's easy to mistake it for construction or something falling nearby until you realize it's getting closer. The sound is wrong for footsteps. Too hollow. Too heavy. Witnesses describe seeing a white shape at the edge of their vision, upright and stiff, rocking slightly as it moves. The fabric of the shroud drags across dirt, tile, concrete, making a faint scraping noise that crawls into your ears. There's no face at first glance, just folds of cloth where a face should be. But if you look too long, you'll see it. Dark eye sockets pressing against the fabric. A mouth stretched open beneath the wrap, frozen in a silent scream. Pokong sightings often happen near graveyards, abandoned buildings, or quiet village roads late at night. The air gets cold. Dogs start whining instead of barking. People report feeling pressure in their chests, like the atmosphere itself is pushing down on them. One man claimed he heard whispering in a language he didn't recognize, coming from behind him, even though the street was empty. When he turned around, the Pokong was there, close enough that he could smell damp earth and decay seeping through the cloth. The most disturbing stories come from inside homes. People wake up to that sound inside their house. Some believe that if you untie the knots, the spirit will finally rest. Others say that's a lie the Pokong spreads, a trick to get close enough to finish what death started. In some villages, people avoid walking alone at night entirely. Windows stay shut, lights stay on, and when someone hears that sound outside, no one checks. Because the final warning tied to the Pokong is simple. If you hear it hop toward you, don't run, don't scream, don't look back. The moment you turn around, it knows you're aware of it. And once it knows that, it won't stop following. That's why people say this list ends here. Not because there aren't scarier legends, but because some stories are believed to listen. And if you've been hearing things while this played, If the silence around you feels heavier than before, maybe it's not the audio. Maybe something hopped a little closer while you were listening.